The Strait of Hormuz. Sunrise. The narrow throat of the world's oil supply, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. 20% of all global oil passes through this water. 21 million barrels every single day. And on this morning, something was about to happen that the world would not forget.
It started as a blip, a radar signature, then two, then three. 3 Iranian fighter jets, F-14 Tomcats, the same legendary airframes America retired nearly 2 decades ago, but which Iran has kept alive through sheer will and reverse engineering, screaming low over the Persian Gulf, closing fast on a target that no one in their right mind would approach without authorization. The United States ship Abraham Lincoln, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, a floating city of 5,000 sailors and Marines, 90 combat aircraft, the most potent symbol of American military power on the planet.
And 3 Iranian jets were flying straight toward it. In the Combat Information Center aboard the Lincoln, alarms began to sound. Radar operators stared at their screens in disbelief. Officers shouted coordinates. The carrier's escort ships, guided missile destroyers and cruisers bristling with anti-air weapons, locked their targeting systems onto the incoming aircraft. One of the Iranian F-14s broke formation. It dove. It closed to within what military officials would later describe as dangerously close range. Close enough that the carrier's defensive systems began calculating intercept solutions. Close enough that one wrong move, one twitch of a pilot's finger, one misinterpreted signal could ignite a war that would consume the Middle East.
And then, ... something happened that no one expected. To understand what happened next, to truly grasp the weight of that moment in the Strait of Hormuz, you have to understand the road that led us here.
February 28th, 2026. After months of failed negotiations, collapsed ceasefires, and escalating rhetoric, the United States and Israel launched a joint military offensive against Iran. They called it Operation Epic Fury. The stated objective? To degrade Iran's nuclear capabilities, destroy its ballistic missile arsenal, and force Tehran to the negotiating table. The opening salvos were devastating. Hundreds of precision-guided munitions rained down on Iranian military installations. Air defense batteries were obliterated. Command and control centers were reduced to rubble. And in one of the most consequential moments of the campaign, a strike killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, along with other senior Iranian officials.
The United States believed this decapitation strike would break Iran's will to fight. They were wrong. Within hours of the attack, Iran launched Operation True Promise 4, a massive retaliation involving hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones targeting United States and Israeli military assets across the region. The aircraft carrier, United States ship Abraham Lincoln, which had been positioned in the Arabian Sea as part of what President Trump called an armada, was specifically targeted by Iranian missiles. Tehran claimed that the carrier was struck and forced to retreat more than 1,000 kilometers from Iranian waters.
The United States denied the carrier was hit. Central Command insisted the missiles fell harmlessly into the sea. But satellite imagery and open-source intelligence analysts noted something curious. The Abraham Lincoln's carrier-based F-18 fighters were suddenly being photographed with 5 external fuel tanks, maximum range configuration, suggesting they were operating from much farther away than before. The carrier had, in fact, been pushed back, way back. This was the battlefield, a war of missiles and drones,
A war of claims and counterclaims. A war where the Strait of Hormuz, that narrow ribbon of water, became the most contested real estate on Earth.
On April 13, 2026, President Trump ordered a full naval blockade of Iranian ports. Quote, "If any of these ships come anywhere close to our blockade," he announced, "they will be immediately eliminated." Iran responded by closing the Strait of Hormuz entirely. Every ship, every tanker, every drop of oil. The global economy began to convulse. Oil prices surged past $96 per barrel. Economists warned of demand destruction. The International Monetary Fund called it a large, global, and asymmetric supply shock. And then, on April 17, in a stunning reversal, Iran announced the strait would reopen, but with conditions. Only vessels following strict new regulations would be permitted to pass. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy commander declared that a new order was now in place over the strategic waterway. Oil prices plummeted. Markets breathed. For a single fragile day, it seemed the crisis might de-escalate.
That hope lasted exactly 24 hours. On April 18, Iran reversed course again. The strait was closed. The reason? Tehran accused the United States of violating the ceasefire by continuing its naval blockade. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a chilling warning. Any ship approaching the strait will be considered as cooperation with the enemy and will be targeted. This was the world on the morning when 3 Iranian F-14s flew toward an American aircraft carrier. A world balanced on the edge of a knife. A world where one spark could set everything ablaze. Let me take you onto the flight deck of the United States ship Abraham Lincoln. It is just after dawn. The Arabian Sea stretches to the horizon, flat and gray. On the carrier's deck, flight crews in color-coded jerseys, purple for fuel, green for catapult and arresting gear, yellow for aircraft handling, move with the choreographed precision of a ballet performed on a runway that never stops moving. In the carrier's Combat Information Center, buried deep within the ship's armored heart, a radar operator leans forward. A contact. Fast. Low. Coming from the direction of the Iranian coast. Vampire. 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 The code word for hostile aircraft. Within seconds, a second contact appears. Then, a third. 3 Iranian fighter jets, later confirmed to be F-14 Tomcats, operating out of Bandar Abbas, Iran's primary naval base on the Persian Gulf, are closing on the carrier at supersonic speeds. The Lincoln's escort ships, Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, bristling with SM-6 surface-to-air missiles, immediately lock onto the incoming threats. Aegis combat systems calculate firing solutions. The carrier's own defensive systems, Phalanx close-in weapon system Gatling guns capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute, spin up and track the incoming aircraft. On the flight deck, the order comes. Launch the alert fighters. 2 F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters, the most advanced combat aircraft ever built, are already positioned on the catapults. Their pilots are strapped in, engines spooled, ready to launch within seconds of the command.
But here is the thing about an F-14 flying at supersonic speed. By the time you see it, by the time your radar paints a clear picture, by the time your fighters can get airborne and intercept, it is already on top of you. The lead Iranian F-14 breaks from formation. It descends sharply, dropping to wave-top height, just 50 feet above the water. This is a classic attack profile, the kind of maneuver designed to stable low radar coverage, to emerge from the sea clutter at the last possible moment. On the bridge of the Lincoln, the commanding officer gives a single order. Hold fire. Let me tell you why that order was so extraordinary. Under the United States Navy's standing rules of engagement, any aircraft that approaches a carrier with hostile intent can be engaged and destroyed. The determination of hostile intent is left to the on-scene commander. With 3 Iranian fighters closing fast, with one of them executing what any naval aviator would recognize as an attack profile, the Lincoln's captain had every legal and tactical justification to order those F-35s to launch and to order his escorts to fire. But the captain did not. He held fire. Why? Because he understood something that the Iranian pilots, Iranian commanders, and the entire world would only comprehend in the moments that followed. The F-14 pulled up hard. It climbed sharply, passing within what military sources later described as dangerously close range of the carrier's superstructure. Close enough that sailors on the flight deck could see the Iranian roundel on the aircraft's wings. Close enough that they could see the pilot, a human being just like them, in the cockpit. And then the F-14 did something no one expected. It waggled its wings. In aviation, a wing waggle is a universal signal. It means, I see you. I mean you no harm. This is a greeting, not an attack. The other 2 F-14s fell into formation behind their leader. Together, the 3 Iranian fighters executed a slow, deliberate flyby of the United States ship Abraham Lincoln, so close that the roar of their engines rattled the carrier's island structure. And then they banked hard toward the Iranian coast and disappeared over the horizon. The entire engagement lasted less than 4 minutes. No shots were fired. No missiles were launched. No one died. But the message had been delivered, and it was louder than any explosion. To understand what those 3 F-14 pilots were really doing over the Arabian Sea, you have to understand the F-14 Tomcat itself. It is an American aircraft, designed by Grumman, built for the United States Navy. The star of Top Gun, Maverick, and Goose, the fighter that defined American air superiority for 3 decades. The United States retired its last F-14 in 2006, but Iran still flies them. Think about that. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the only country in the world that still operates the F-14 Tomcat. They acquired 79 of them from the United States in the 1970s, back when the Shah was still on the peacock throne, and Iran was America's closest ally in the Middle East. After the 1979 revolution, the United States cut off all support. No spare parts, no maintenance manuals, no upgrades. And yet, 47 years later, those same F-14s are still flying. Iranian engineers have reverse-engineered components. They have developed domestic upgrades. They have kept these aging warbirds combat-capable through sheer ingenuity and determination. Every time an Iranian F-14 takes off, it carries a message. You abandoned us. You cut us off. You tried to break us. And we are still here. But this flyby was not just about symbolism. It was about something far more immediate and far more dangerous. Iran's top naval commander, Rear Admiral Shahram Irani, had been making a bold claim for weeks that Iranian forces had successfully prevented United States and Israeli aircraft carrier strike groups from entering the Sea of Oman. The United States dismissed this as propaganda. But those 3 F-14s, flying within visual range of an American supercarrier, proved something that no press release could dispute. Iranian forces can find United States carriers. They can approach them, and they can do so without being stopped.
That is the terrifying truth that naval strategists have been quietly acknowledging for years. In the confined waters of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, America's carrier advantage is severely degraded.
The water is too shallow for submarines to operate effectively. The airspace is too crowded for stealth to provide complete protection. And Iranian anti-ship missiles, hundreds of them, hidden in hardened bunkers along the coast, are always ready. Those 3 F-14s were not attacking. They were demonstrating. They were saying, "We know exactly where you are. We can reach you anytime we want. And the only reason you're still afloat is because we choose not to sink you."
The flyby ended. The F-14s returned to base. The Abraham Lincoln continued its patrol. And for a few hours, it seemed that the most dangerous confrontation in decades had passed without catastrophe. But something had changed. Something fundamental. Within hours of the flyby, Iranian media began broadcasting a very different version of events. According to Tehran's official narrative, Iranian forces had not merely flown past the carrier, they had forced it to retreat. They claimed that United States aircraft had been shot down. They claimed that the American naval blockade had failed. They claimed victory. The United States Central Command responded with an unusually blunt statement. "All United States fighter aircraft are accounted for," Central Command declared. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has made the same false claim at least half a dozen times. Two competing realities. Two versions of the truth. And in the fog of war, both sides knew that perception could be as powerful as any weapon. Then, on April 19, everything escalated.
A United States Navy guided missile destroyer, the United States ship Spruance, intercepted an Iranian-flagged cargo vessel named the Tuska in the Gulf of Oman. The ship was attempting to breach the American naval blockade. After repeated warnings were ignored, the Spruance fired on the vessel, quote, punching a hole in the engine room, unquote, as President Trump later described it. United States Marines boarded the disabled ship and took control. The crew was detained. This was the first direct enforcement action of the blockade. The United States had drawn blood, or at least it had punched a hole in Iranian steel. Iran's response was immediate and furious. Tehran accused the United States of piracy and vowed swift retaliation. Within hours, Iranian forces launched a wave of drones toward United States warships in the Sea of Oman. The tit-for-tat had begun in earnest. And then came the claim that stopped the world.
Iranian media reported that United States aircraft had been shot down. Not one, not two. 3 American fighter jets, an F-15, an A-10, and another F-15, allegedly downed by Iranian air defenses over the Strait of Hormuz and Iranian territory. The claims were extraordinary. An F-15 Strike Eagle, one of the most advanced fighter jets in the United States arsenal, crashed inside Iran. The crew ejected, one pilot was rescued by United States forces. The other remained missing, with Iranian officials offering a reward for his capture. An A-10 Thunderbolt, the legendary Warthog ground attack aircraft, was struck near the Strait of Hormuz and crashed into the Gulf. Its pilot was rescued. And Iran announced it had used a new, previously unknown air defense system to accomplish this feat. A system built, they claimed, by, quote, the young scientists and proud youth of this country. The United States denied everything. Central Command insisted that all aircraft were accounted for. The Pentagon dismissed the Iranian claims as propaganda. President Trump, in characteristic fashion, declared that Iran's capabilities had been reduced to almost zero, and that United States forces enjoyed air superiority inside Iran's airspace. But here is what the United States could not deny. The F-15 crash was real. United States officials acknowledged that an F-15E had gone down inside Iran, that one crew member had been rescued, and that a search was underway for the second. They blamed the crash on mechanical failure or pilot error.
not Iranian air defenses. But the simple fact remained. An American fighter jet was down, inside Iranian territory, during a war.
And that A-10? The United States confirmed it had crashed in the Gulf. The pilot was rescued, but the aircraft was lost. 2 American combat aircraft destroyed in the same engagement. Whether by Iranian missiles or by mechanical failure, the result was the same. The world's most powerful air force had just lost 2 warplanes in a single day of combat with Iran. While the military confrontation unfolded in the skies and waters around the Strait of Hormuz, something else was happening. Something that would affect every person on Earth, whether they knew it or not. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil. 21 million barrels of crude and petroleum products pass through this narrow waterway every single day. When Iran announced it was closing the strait, global markets panicked. Brent crude, the international benchmark for oil prices, surged past $96 per barrel. United States crude jumped above $90. The spike was immediate, violent, and unprecedented in the modern era. The International Energy Agency called it a historic supply shock. The International Monetary Fund warned that the Strait of Hormuz might never return to its pre-war normal. Rabobank analysts projected that even if the war ended immediately, oil supplies through the strait would only reach 80% of pre-war levels by late August. And then something even more alarming happened. Iran reopened the strait. Oil prices plummeted. Then Iran closed it again. Oil prices skyrocketed. This is what economists call volatility. But for ordinary people, for the truck driver filling his rig, for the family budgeting for their weekly commute, for the airline calculating fuel costs, it meant something far more concrete. Uncertainty. Fear. The realization that a conflict 7,000 miles away could empty their wallets and disrupt their lives. And this was just the beginning. Shipping data show vessels making U-turns in the Gulf of Oman. Insurance rates for tankers transiting the region soared to levels not seen in decades. Global supply chains, already fragile from years of disruption, began to buckle. The world was getting a brutal education in just how dependent it remains on a single, narrow, and deeply contested stretch of water. That is what those 3 F-14 pilots were really flying over. Not just an American aircraft carrier. The entire global economy. In the midst of the military confrontation and the oil shock, something else was dying. Diplomacy. Peace talks that had been scheduled in Pakistan collapsed. Iran's deputy foreign minister announced that Tehran was not yet ready to move on to an actual meeting because of Washington's maximalist demands. The United States insisted that the naval blockade would remain in full force until Iran agreed to terms including the dismantling of its nuclear program. President Trump, in a series of posts on Truth Social and statements to the press, alternated between threats and overtures. He warned Iran not to blackmail the United States. He threatened to easily open the strait by force. He extended and then shortened deadlines for Iranian compliance. Iran, for its part, accused the United States of piracy and maritime plunder. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps warned that any attack on Iranian vessels would be met with a hard blow. And Iran's parliament speaker mocked President Trump's claims of victory, noting that the war had been downgraded from regime change to, "Hey, exclamation point, can anyone find our pilots, question mark? Please, exclamation point." Neither side was backing down. Neither side could afford to back down. And so the world waited, breath held, for the next move. It came on April 20. Iranian forces reportedly launched drones toward United States warships in the Sea of Oman, following the United States seizure of the Iranian cargo vessel Tuska.
The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claimed that American forces had been forced to retreat after firing on an Iranian merchant ship. The United States denied any retreat. The pattern was now clear. Provocation, response, escalation.
And beneath it all, the growing fear that someone, an overeager pilot, a nervous ship captain, a misinformed commander, would make a mistake that could not be taken back. Because in the Strait of Hormuz, a mistake does not just cost lives, it could cost the world its economy. 3 Iranian fighter jets, 1 American aircraft carrier, a confrontation that lasted less than 4 minutes but will echo for years. What did it mean? What does it all mean? First, Iran demonstrated that it can find, approach, and threaten American aircraft carriers in their own operating areas. Not with stealth, not with overwhelming force, with aging F-14s and sheer audacity. That message was received loud and clear in Washington, in Tehran, and in every naval command center from Norfolk to Beijing. Second, the United States showed restraint that in another era might have been called weakness. But Lincoln's captain held fire when every rule engagement said he could have shot those F-14s out of the sky. Was that wisdom or hesitation? Courage or exhaustion? History will judge. Third, the information war is now as important as the shooting war. Iran claimed it shot down American jets. The United States denied it. Both sides have evidence, both sides have narratives. And in the fog of modern conflict, the truth becomes whatever people choose to believe. Fourth, and most importantly, the Strait of Hormuz remains the most dangerous place on Earth. 21 miles wide, 20% of the world's oil, and 2 determined adversaries who have spent more than 40 years lying to hate each other.
Those 3 F-14 pilots probably landed back at Bandar Abbas, climbed out of their cockpits, and went home to their families. The sailors aboard the United States ship Abraham Lincoln probably grabbed coffee in the mess hall and tried to process what they had just witnessed. And somewhere in the Pentagon, in the White House, in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps command bunkers, people with stars on their shoulders and the weight of the world on their minds began planning for the next encounter. Because there will be a next encounter. There always is. The war between the United States and Iran did not end in April 2026. It merely entered a new phase. A phase of direct naval confrontation, of drone swarms and missile salvos, of seized cargo ships and downed fighter jets. The conflict that began on February 28th had killed more than 3,000 Iranians, according to Tehran's own figures. American casualties were mounting. The region was bleeding. And in the end, 3 Iranian F-14s, relics of a bygone era, maintained through decades of sanctions and isolation, flew past an American supercarrier and changed nothing. And changed everything. The Strait of Hormuz, sunrise, the narrow throat of the world's oil supply, and somewhere in the haze, on the horizon, 3 dots are approaching. History, it seems, is not done with this story yet.